John 6 so far started with Jesus feeding 5,000 people plus women and children. And he did it with a couple fish and a couple loaves of bread. And everybody got everything they wanted to eat, and then there was food left over. Consequently, the people started following Jesus. And seeker-sensitive Jesus, who's just trying to build a church, who just wants a following, sensitive Jesus then preaches a message to them wherein he drives them all completely away, which is not the way most churches would operate. They would think, well, this is a great day. We got 5,000 people plus women and children all following. It even says that when he goes to the other side of the lake, which he walks most of the way across the lake, when he gets to the other side of the lake, as we saw last week, the crowd gets up the next day and realizes he's not here, and that there's only one boat gone, and they know that his apostles took that boat. And so they go searching for him. It even says that they came seeking Jesus. So for the seeker-sensitive movement, for the folks who think what you've got to do is just find someone who's willing to seek Jesus and then fan that spark, fan that flame of interest until they're willing to make some kind of profession, Jesus doesn't do any of that. You don't see any of that demonstrated by Jesus. He instead looks them in the eye and says, you're following me because I've fed you. You're not coming here because I'm the Son of God. You're not following me because you've seen the miracles and are convinced of the completion of salvation in me. There's no theological reason or rationale for why you're following me. He said, you're following me because I fed you. That's why you're here. So then, rather than allow them to make him king, which we read last week was their intention, their reasoning was, let's make him king. He's clearly miraculous. He might even be Messiah. Let's make him king because what a great king. We'd never go hungry. We'd never be sick. He's the ultimate, best, greatest king. Let's make him king. He refuses to allow them to make him an earthly king. Instead, he insists that they recognize who he is and what he's about. And when he preaches that theology to them, when he preaches the sound doctrine to them, when he explains that he is the center of the religious universe and what you do with him determines your eternity, they're also impressed. They leave till he's down to the 12. And then we'll say to them, are you leaving too? And then Peter says, where are we going to go? You have the words of life. So that's where we're headed. What we're going to look at tonight is the essence of this sermon that Jesus preaches to this seeker-sensitive crowd. Now, they've seen the great miracles. They've all been fed by the miraculous fish and bread. They followed and pursued him across the sea because he fed them. They're seeking him out because of what he's done for them. And yet he explains it to them as plainly as possible. You don't believe. Now, what did he tell them a minute ago when they said, what do we do that we can do the works of God? He said, believe. The work of God is that you believe me. And then he says to them, you do not believe. Who's in charge here?
Jesus.
Yeah. Who's in control there? He did not say, oh, goody, seekers. Oh, they sought me all the way across the sea. They've come following me because they want food, and I think I'll give them food and puppets and smoke machines and mimes and taekwondo class and give them everything I can possibly get them to just keep coming back to me and keep coming back to me because I'm trying to build a church here. And after all, I need as many people to keep coming as I can get. Instead, he unabashedly said to them, the one thing you need to do is believe, and what you cannot do and will not do is believe. Are they therefore doing the works of God? That was their question.
Nope.
What do we do to do the works of God? He told them and then said, and you don't do it. So of what value was their fleshly seeking so far? None whatsoever. See, the primary difference between the contemporary notion of how you build a church and the biblical concept of how you build a church is that the contemporary church thinks you bring people in, you count heads, you do numbers, you collect money, and that constitutes a church. The Bible said, Jesus said, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So either the activity, the institution, the programs build the church, in which case you've got a humanistic man-made church that comes there for what you get out of it. Give me more bread, fill my belly, give me more stuff. Or you have the church that Jesus builds, and in the church that Jesus builds, he says to people who don't believe, you don't believe. He has no problem with telling people what their state is. And he doesn't seem to be particularly concerned about numbers. He's mostly concerned with purity of faith, purity of doctrine, and the recognition, first and foremost, the primary thing is recognition of who he is. Because the Church of Jesus Christ is supposed to be about the recognition and worship of Christ. He is the center point, the key notion. He is the heart of all our doctrine and theology. He is supposed to be front and center. And anytime you use him as nothing more than an addendum at the end of all your programs, then people aren't coming for him, they're coming for the programs. For this is the will of my Father, that everyone who beholds the Son and believes, that's the verb form up there, pistuo, everyone that has faith in him may have eternal life, and I myself will raise him up on the last day. Does any of that sound like he was insecure about the process?
No.
No. And he's telling this to people who don't believe. So he's explaining in this context why it is that they don't believe. And he's explaining why it is that some do believe. But they have said, what do we do to do the works of God? And he said, you have to believe. And then he said to them, and you don't believe. And then he explains to them why they don't believe. Because everyone who's given to me from my Father will come to me. You won't come to me because you're not given to me. You weren't chosen. That's the only rationale for why you don't believe. You follow me because I fill your belly. You're trying to make me king because I give you stuff. But when it comes to recognizing me as the bread that comes down from heaven, the bread that will eternally satisfy you, when you see me as that drink, that water from heaven that will make you never thirst again, when you understand me in that kind of eternal framework, it is only because the God of forever determined that you belong to me, and everyone that belongs to me is going to come to me. But you won't come to me because you weren't given to me, because my Father didn't choose you. So does Jesus seem to have any problem preaching the doctrine of election?
No problem.
Yeah, no problem at all. He was firmly secure in it. But what if that offends some people? What if that might run some people off who might otherwise be seekers? Well, Jesus is going to run off about 5,000 here, plus women and children here, by telling the truth, which I think establishes a very important principle, that truth, the truth of the gospel, genuine doctrine, is more important than making people feel good.